Greetings and welcome to your destination. You've reached the Psychological Wellness Hub. We aim to help you build your knowledge and wellness around better understanding mental health and psychological concepts. Welcome back to the channel. Today's topic is geared towards answering this question. What is psychotherapy treatment? Part 4. Another example and types of psychotherapy treatment. What does psychotherapy treatment look like? Here's our second example of looking at a course of psychotherapy treatment. A brief example will be given here. This is not a real patient. However, the example will replicate real-life experience for a patient. We will use similar examples as in the last video, but we will alter the treatment type. We will use the same patient from the last video, Marcy. Many of the same variables will be at play in Marcy's life. However, she will be choosing a different psychotherapy model for her treatment in today's video. Marcy is a woman in her 60s who struggles with anxiety and depression. Marcy comes to psychotherapy treatment to help her deal with these conditions, but also wants to be more outgoing and notices others take advantage of her. She meets her psychotherapist for the first time. She and her psychotherapist do an assessment in her first visit to establish a diagnosis or a working diagnosis that relates to her concerns. In addition, her therapist will be establishing possible patterns and working up ideas of approaches in working with Mary. If time allows, in the first session, or perhaps the second session, Marcy and her therapist will develop a brief treatment plan. This is basically a goal of Marcy's that they will target in the psychotherapy treatment. This could possibly be one of several things. For example, depression, anxiety, feeling victimized by others. The treatment plan will also help them decide together what approach will be best suited to Marcy's issues. Marcy decides that she would like to work on her feelings about being victimized and how she'd like to work through these. All humans have blind spots. Marcy chooses a thinking and behaving method, or what was referred to as cognitive behavioral therapy, or a CBT approach to her therapy. This approach allowed her and her therapist to look at information that was not in Marcy's awareness. That there was a relationship between her thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. So if Marcy thought and felt something about herself, others, or her situation, she would behave in a way that was consistent with that thought and feeling. Marcy and her therapist began by discussing and understanding more about her experiences with being victimized or walked on by others. Through several sessions, Marcy became more aware of her nature of being a decent and nice person, and how her focus on this desire often caused her to ignore red flags and maltreatment by other individuals. She ignored this to the point it reached maximum exploitation. Said differently, it's not until Marcy had been lied to, scammed, or let others take over that she started realizing and experiencing real consequences. As she continued with her session, she became increasingly aware of the consequences, like her funds in her bank running low from loaning too much money, or overdraft fees, or people pulling out money because she lent out her bank card. Consequences like people taking and continue to take from Marcy. This leaves Marcy feeling bad, and she is reluctant to say anything because she helps people that are down on their luck. As Marcy starts to face and learn from her behavior, she begins to learn that she sometimes helps individuals whom are appreciative and return the favor. However, she also helps out a lot of predatory individuals who only seek to exploit her. Marcy starts to learn that she is being blinded by her goodwill, as she labeled it. Marcy, through the help of her therapist, became more aware of some thoughts and feelings around this. She would have common thoughts like, "My goodwill is what gets me through. Give and you shall receive." As she looked deeper into these thoughts, in her core, she realized that she had some other thoughts like, "I'm not a good person if I'm not given to others." She also was able to identify emotions tied to this thought like guilt, sadness, and anger. As she continued with more sessions, Marcy started to explore her behaviors in general and had realized that she was helping others all the time and started to reduce her own activities as she became more anxious and depressed. She was giving so much to others, she was so altruistic, she stopped having fun. She stopped taking care of herself. One day, she decided to do a brief behavioral experiment or test to see what it was like to take herself to the movies or to put herself first. She recorded this experiment and her reactions on a homework worksheet. She noticed that she felt less focused on feeling depressed, and her depression actually started to lift a little bit. She then worked with her therapist to behaviorally activate or participate in more pleasant activities. Again, she kept track of this on a worksheet and noted how her mood was less pressed and less down after these pleasurable activities. Marcy took this further as she learned about boundaries. We'll talk more about this in another video. She had learned from this that she doesn't provide goodwill unto herself by taking the position of helping herself. She gives out to others but doesn't fill up her own gas tank, leaving herself constantly running on fumes. Marcy also learned about some other types of thoughts or cognitions. She wrote these down to share with her therapist. She recognized that she had certain thoughts. Thoughts like, I must feel guilty when I feel anger towards someone I'm helping. Only a bad person would feel angry in that way to someone who's down on their luck. Marcy wondered if this had something to do with the way she grew up. As she would offer to care for someone else till her resources and psychological gas ran out, she would then begin to experience feelings like anger towards the person she was helping. As she continued the treatment, though, through further sessions, Marcy became gradually aware of this pattern with her therapist. She engaged in efforts to look at her behavior. She looked farther beyond her blind spots. She tapped into hope, resilience, and used her healthy anxiety instead of accepting the destructive anxiety. See the psychological wellness videos for more on this. Marcy started looking at facing her feelings instead of avoiding them and attacking herself for having them. Marcy started to avoid falling into the default level of guilt and shame. Marcy started asserting herself more and having more healthy boundaries when relating to herself and relating to others. Marcy had now discovered through several therapeutic transactions what contributed to her anxiety and depression. She became more aware of her core beliefs. Things like, I'm no good. People will not like me if I don't help them. My goodwill is the only thing I have to offer other people. She also became aware, as she thought of these thoughts, through the CBT tools, she was able to restructure these thoughts. For example, the thought, my goodwill is the only thing I have to offer, became, I have many skills that I value about myself, and others like it too. Things like my ability to get through hard times, my sewing skills, my passion for reading. While I do appreciate the others that appreciate my goodwill, it's just a small part of me. As she continued her therapy, her anxiety and depression became more manageable, where she was able to be more in charge as she continued through the stages of recovery. Marcy continued to feel freer, less weighed down, more relaxed, and more at ease with herself. She continued to help others, but in moderation. She was able to have a keener eye for not beating herself up and seeing the red flags for her and others' behaviors that didn't serve her or her best interests, or theirs and their best interests. Marcy's self-esteem continued to grow, and she had more fulfilling and meaningful relationships with herself and with others. What are some different types of psychotherapy treatment? There are, at this point, thousands of types of psychotherapy treatment and growing as new ones are developed several times a year. Here's a brief list of different types of psychotherapy treatment. Again, it does not include all of them. There are cognitive or behavioral types of treatment, things known as cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT. Behavioral therapy or BT, behavioral activation or BA, cognitive restructuring or CR. There are insight-oriented, experiential, or dynamic types of psychotherapy. They often have names like psychodynamic psychotherapy, intensive short-term dynamic psychotherapy, mentalization-based treatment, transference-focused psychotherapy, affect phobia therapy, APT, time-limited dynamic psychotherapy or TLDP, IFS, or what's known as internal family systems. There are mindful-based types of psychotherapy. These are things like ACT, or acceptance and commitment therapy, mindfulness, or MBCT, which is known as mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. There are trauma-focused treatments, things like CBT for PTSD, or also known as cognitive behavioral therapy for post-traumatic stress disorder. Additional trauma-focused treatments are things like CPT or cognitive processing therapy, prolonged exposure or PE, virtual reality exposure therapy or VRET. There are treatments that are for addictions or substance use disorders, things like motivational interviewing or MI, things like MET, motivational enhancement therapy, CBT for SUD. So that's shorthand for cognitive behavioral therapy for substance use disorder. IOP, or intensive outpatient treatment. LIB, also known as living in balance. COPE, this is concurrent treatment of prolonged exposure and substance use disorders. And then there's IDDT, or integrated dual disorders treatment. There are treatments for psychosis or mood disorders, things like CBT for psychosis, or cognitive behavioral therapy for psychosis. SST, which is social skills training. CET, which is cognitive enhancement training. CBT for depression, again, cognitive behavioral therapy for depression. CBT for bipolar disorder, or cognitive behavioral therapy for bipolar disorder. There are treatments for personality disorders, Things like ISTDP, Intensive Short-Term Dynamic Psychotherapy, TFP, or Transference-Focused Psychotherapy, Schema-Focused Therapy for PD, or ST for PD, or Cognitive Behavioral Therapy for personality disorders, and DBT, Dialectical Behavioral Therapy, and many, many more. Keep an eye out or watch more on behavioral health treatments and the playlist on this channel. See more information in the description below. Also keep an eye out for psychological wellness skills mentioned in the example. Look for that playlist on the channel to learn more about growing your psychological wellness skills around psychotherapy treatment and more. We hope you found today's topic was useful for yourself or someone else. Let us know if it was by commenting below. Let us know what you'd like to hear about and what topics could be useful to you by commenting below, and we'll take it under consideration. If you like what you heard today and would like to hear more from Destination Psychological Wellness Hub, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Follow us. This will help you get the newest content produced by the channel to you. Please tell all your friends and family about this channel or share this and other videos with them on this channel. Encourage them to like and subscribe. And as always, we hope your psychological wellness continues to grow with us in this community. Thank you.